And I do want to say, as Kaine pointed out, as all of our listeners know, Kaine's African American. He's sitting 4 feet away now from Frank. I am mixed, some Black, Latin, and who knows what else inside me. And get this, we even have a Jew in the house, and we're all getting along together. And so,
right.
you know,
so honored to be in this company.
Have to give a shout out to Ron Meyer here with the Anti-Defamation League.
Yes.
You're in charge of the New York region?
I direct all of ADL's activities in New York, in the state of New York.
And we wanted to have you here just because I know as part, we go through Frank's entire life. We see the highs and the lows. It's bumpy. And as Frank just referenced, he's got his hockey program going, and he ended up going out and speaking on behalf of the Anti-Defamation League. And I wanted you just to speak about that just a little bit and let us know the importance of that, because some people think a former skinhead talking about, speaking on behalf of the Anti-Defamation League, what's that about?
Yeah, well, I think it's even, the beginning of that story is even stranger. When I was reading Frank's book, too, he tells the story of when he, in a sense, turned himself in, not for criminal activity in a sense, but voluntarily walked into an FBI office and told his story at length, just dumped it all out on the FBI agent. And it wasn't criminality. He was just, it came right after the Oklahoma City bombing. It just did something to him. He'll talk about it better than I could ever. But at the end of a long interview, the FBI agent turns to him, probably the last thing in the world that Frank ever expected an FBI agent to say to him, which was, there's probably not much more I can do for you, but I think you should go and talk to ADL. And I think his response, and I pretty much quote it, because I couldn't say it as well, was what went through his head, what went through Frank's head was that to a skinhead and to right-wing extremist groups, ADL is the enemy. I'm quoting him from the book, is the enemy, because ADL knows a vast amount about right-wing extremist groups and other kind of extremist organizations throughout this country. And we knew about Frank. We hadn't met him yet. He hadn't walked in our door yet. But we knew about Frank because one of the things that ADL does, look, ADL's role in the world is really to confront hate in all of its forms, whether it be anti-Semitism directed at Jews. A lot of people know us about that, but we're almost 100 years old as an organization, and on day one in Chicago, which is where we were founded, we were about equal treatment for all people, no matter who. It wasn't a Jewish story. It may be a Jewish ethic, but it wasn't a Jewish story. Right. And so when Frank turned, when the FBI agent turned to Frank and said, I know somebody at the ADL. I think Frank probably looked at him like he was out of his mind.
How was that first meeting for you?
Well, it wasn't with me personally. It was with a colleague of mine because Frank was life began and came back around to Philadelphia, and ADL's got presence throughout the country. And like I head up the New York office of ADL, a dear colleague of mine who's been in ADL much longer than I, Barry Morrison, was probably one of the other first Jews that Frank had that kind of contact with. First somebody employed him, and then he got to Barry Morrison. The story I remember well from the book. It's a fresh read. That they met, in a neutral place, so Barry could check him out. And the checking out wasn't, is he real, but it really was, is his desire to go in a different direction real?
Sure.
A lot of people, unfortunately, he's not alone in having somehow been captured by an extremist group. He was ready for it. He was right for it. It could have been anything, just the way he said it. But the question for us was, and for Barry at the time was, is this guy for real in terms of his desire to go in a different direction? And when that became clear, after I think one very long talk in a hotel lobby, I guess, that began the relationship between Frank in specific and ADL, because one thing that we know is that understanding and fighting hate really begins with understanding and education. And we talk a lot about that. We know a lot about that. But there is nothing like someone who's been through it, who's lived it, talking to contemporaries and people who are in those same experiences. I may have a little bit of expertise, know a little bit about it from a little bit of a distant perch. But Frank, when he sits in a room with people in their 20s or people in their teens, really, who are also adrift in this world, and tells them his story, they've learned about hate and what it means, and they know what another path, that there is another path, and ADL is part about educating kids towards that other path.
Gotcha. Well, speaking about contemporaries and hearing people speak about their experience, as my voice cracks and I twist up my speech, if you want to hear a fascinating story, in fact, you know what? I am demanding all of our listeners to go out right now to their local bookstore, get this book, or again, log on to Amazon.com. The name of the book is Autobiography of a Recovering Skinhead. And I think, just got to throw this out here before we go, I think it's really, really important. The themes in this book are universal, I feel, and I feel that, you know, race and hate, it just takes different forms. And right now there's a lot of discussion going on with the election of a black president. Immigration issues are back. Gay issues are back. People are looking at the Middle East again, you know, not again, just yet again, you know, every day. And I just feel like, you know, it's prime season yet again for some fringe elements to start, for people to exacerbate things and misstate situations. And I think one of the main reasons to fight stuff like that is to hear, as Ron said, and as we've been talking to Frank about, hear about it firsthand. That's the first solution of a problem. So I want, you know, all of our listeners to get the book. People that aren't listening, demand it, buy it as a gift. Frank, a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
How can we follow you online?
You can go to frankmink.com. I had a really nice person made the website for me. I mean, just said they would do it, and great guy. And so, you know, because I'm not good with that stuff really. And then, you know, you can find me on Twitter at Frank Mink, or Facebook even. You can Facebook me and say where you heard me, and Frank Mink on Facebook, and I think it's Frankie Mink actually with the IE at the end, and just tell me where you heard me, and I'll friend you. I mean, you know, it's always good. And you know, we were talking about it being about race, and you know, it's the bigger part is that we're just individuals with each other. Yeah. And my job on this earth today is to be a better human being, not just to my loved ones, but to the next person I meet. And that doesn't mean you have to be all, you know, you don't have to have a kumbaya every time, but just hold the door for someone, say thank you, say please, and just give a little bit of respect to another human being. And that's one of the ways I know stops hate.
That's great. That realization helps us all realize that. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thought that
sure.
After you've picked up Frank's book and read it through, because I think that'll open your eyes to many of your listeners out there. But if you need help in your fight against hate, in your kid's school, in your own life, in your workplace, just dial up www.adl.org and look for our Center for Extremism. And we're there. We're there in New York, and we're there for anybody. We were there for Frank when he came through the door, and he's been there for us because he's carried this message as effectively as anybody has. So just think about ADL, and after you read the book, you'll know there's a lot out there to be thinking about.
Okay, going to remind everybody again, www.adl.org, www.frankmink.com. I'm going to spell this again, people, FrankMeink.com. Frank is on Twitter as well. I'm going to give you the address right now. He mixed it up a little bit on us. Frankie Mink. So that's FrankieMeeink at Twitter. And Facebook, I got to tell you one more cool thing. The name of the book is Autobiography of a Recovering Skinhead. Put that in the search engine. There's actually a fan page. Frank's just got this up. Already 2,000 people like the book, and it's spreading.
Right.
Log on right now. Get on Facebook. Like this book. Make sure you read it. Frank, thank you so much for stopping by Unfiltered.
Thank you for having me.